Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's special Ohigan, the spring Ohigan, the Ada Shore service. And I hope you have recuperated from yesterday's spring Sakura Matsuri Bazaar. Well, somebody's shaking head. But without your help, we couldn't have a successful event. So I really appreciate your spirit of volunteerism and help in the temple. And today we have Reverend J. Shinseki. He just retired from Buddhist Churches of America's ministry, but he had been ministers for a really long time. I was, looking at his biography. I think he started 1981, right? 1981. Can you guess how old I was? I was just a baby, 1 year old. So he's been minister for really, really long time. And do you know how long Shakyamuni Buddha taught the teaching? When he attained enlightenment, he at 35, right? He attained enlightenment. He passed away at 80. So he shared the teaching for 45 years. Shinseki Sensei is sharing the teaching for almost the same time as Shakyamuni Buddha. That's amazing, isn't it? So Shinseki Sensei went to a Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin in Japan, which is one of the missionary schools in Japan for the ministers to go to. So he went to Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin, also studied and graduated from IBS. So he is one of senior ministers I respect, and we have so much fun at nighttime too. So I'm really happy to have him here today. Also, we have Shinseki Sensei's wife, Jane, here, and Mrs. Masako Sawada, Jane's mother, is here today. So please welcome them, with warmth. So now I would like to introduce Shinseki Sensei. So thank you very much for coming today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sensei, for that wonderful introduction. He's a very nice way of saying that I'm really old and ancient, which I am. I have a PowerPoint here I want to share with you. There we go. So I've been asked to speak very briefly to the Dharma School students and children here today. So for a few minutes, I'll talk to them, and then I'll continue on with an adult talk. But I hope that all of you are having a good day today. It's a beautiful day outside. Today we're observing the coming of spring. The weather is very nice today, and sometimes the weather can affect how we feel. If it's sunny outside, we feel good. If it's rainy outside, we might not feel so good. We might be a little tired from a long day yesterday of work. Or we might even be sad or depressed because of the weather. So it's important to remember that no matter what the weather is like, the sun is always behind those clouds. It's shining all the time. This is how we talk about Amida's compassion or Amida's love for us. No matter what we are experiencing in our everyday lives, the sun is still shining. Amida's love and compassion is always there, even in the hardest of times. In the same way, the best part of who you are is shining inside of you. Even when we're sad, Amida's love embraces us. Even when we're mad, Amida loves us. So just like the loving mother who holds a baby, the more the baby cries, the more the baby struggles and tries to get away, the more the mother embraces and holds closer that baby. The sad days, the good days, Amida always holds us close like a parent. So how many of you Dharma School students have chores at home? All right, everybody has chores at home. I guess the adults too have chores at home, right? Do you share those chores with your family? Yes. This is a reminder to us of so much is being done for us all the time. Chores are being done for us to make our life comfortable. When I was young, all my brothers and my sister, we had chores to do. We helped take care of the yard, we helped clean the house, do the dishes, helped with dinner, and sometimes things didn't get done because we thought the other person had done it. We all assumed that the other person would take care of it. So we all thought wrong. All of us at one time or another might have thought, I thought you did it, or I thought it was my turn, or I thought I would get things my way, or I thought you were nicer, or I thought you would like me. These are things that we think to ourselves sometimes. These thoughts are how we can see inside of ourselves. They are reflections of our true self. They are often hard to see, though. So do you know who this is? Pigpen, right? This is Pigpen. Wherever he goes, there's a cloud of dirt that follows him. Everywhere he goes. If you stand next to him, you get dirty. When he sits at his desk, it gets dirty. Whatever he does, it affects everything around him. We can be like him, not on the outside because we're all very clean, but on the inside sometimes we're not always kind and gentle, right? We can be critical, we can be angry, we can be greedy and selfish. We might even hurt others without even knowing it. Or we can be kind and gentle to every living thing. Yeah, just like Snoopy. Whatever we do, it affects other people. We can be like Pigpen, or we can be like Snoopy. No matter what we do with our thoughts, our words, and our actions, it affects others. So the Buddha, he asks us to have nice thoughts. The Buddha asks us to listen to the teachings, to help us think pure and beautiful thoughts. And the Buddha also understands us. So when our thoughts are not pure, when they are selfish, cruel, or mean, the Buddha shows us our inner self, like Pigpen. But he understands us at the same time, and he embraces us just as we are. So right thoughts can be hard sometimes. So we say, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you to the Buddha for accepting us just as we are every day, 24/7. Thank you very much. Okay? So now I'd like to ask you to join me in Gasho, and I'm going to continue with addressing the adults. Okay. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here in Sacramento to speak to all of you today at Ohigan. I was here for the National Council meeting. I know you worked very hard to put that together. It was a wonderful gathering. And I got here a little early, and I was walking around. I went to the Nokotsudo, and there's in the office there's a plaque with all the ministers' names. And so I remember many of them. When you're as old as I do, you can remember back about halfway through that plaque of people that were ministers here. You know, Reverend Matsubayashi, Reverend Fujimoto, both Ken and Hogan Fujimoto, Reverend Matsubayashi, and of course, Bob and Patty Oshita, and then Sugahara Sensei and Matt Sensei have continued to work hard to make the Sacramento Buddhist Temple what it is today. And so as we gather each time, whether it's Ohigan or any other time, we want to remember them and thank them for all of their efforts that they've done to make the temple what it is. I want to share with you a reading. If you please join me in Gasho. I reflect within myself. The universal vow, difficult to fathom, is indeed a great vessel, bearing us across the ocean, difficult to cross. The unhindered light is the sun of wisdom, dispersing the darkness of our ignorance. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Nam Mandos, Nam Mandos, Nam Mandos, Nam Mandos. I was thinking about how we do our services on Sunday, and we always open with a reading, or we close with a reading, and oftentimes we just kind of read it and then we move on. So I wanted to stop and reflect on this particular reading by Shinran, that there are three important points in here. One is the idea of a universal vow. And it's important because the universal, it means for every single person. No one is excluded. It also means for all time, for eternity, well beyond, before us, during our lives, and after our lives. And then the other term in here he uses is the great vessel. This is the vow that carries us or ferries us across to the other shore of enlightenment. And then thirdly, the unhindered light. Unhindered means that nothing stops this vow. Nothing obstructs this vow. It breaks through all obstructions, including our own ignorance. So I love this imagery that Shinran uses of this great vessel. So there's much about Ohigan that you already know. We know that it's observed twice a year, spring and in the fall. And Ohigan is a time when we feel refreshed. There's nice weather, we're in good spirits, the clothes we wear changes, flowers begin to bloom, and so there's a sense of harmony and beauty in nature. In our Jodo Shinshu tradition, we emphasize the basic harmony of all the elements of the universe. And all that harmony is manifested in Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha represents that harmony. So what is harmony? When we think of harmony, well, today I was thinking about Sugahara Sensei's chanting, how beautiful it is. And then Reverend Matt Hamasaki's voice, that's so beautiful. And then together, everyone chanting creates this beautiful harmony. And to me, that's what harmony is. But also it could mean colors that are harmonious, that work together. You know, when you get dressed, you think about the matching of your shoes or your purse or your clothes, and that has harmony. So I think of harmony as a pleasing arrangement of different parts, and it creates an internal calmness in us. And this is what we find during Ohigan. So the Buddha said that calmness comes about with the completion of these 6 paramitas, or perfections. These are really hard to do. I know that at Ohigan we talk about 6 paramitas and how we should try to do these. We should try to be generous. We should try to be patient, all of this. And it's hard to do these things, especially on a consistent basis. Well, the good news is the Buddha has already done it for us. So those perfections have been done, and we are the recipients of the Buddha's good work. So knowing our limitations, the Buddha has already perfected these 6 paramitas. So when we think about the 6 paramitas, we should think about what we are receiving in our lives. Others are so generous to us. Others are so patient with us. Others allow us to be more self-disciplined. You know, so we are the recipients of all of these. Now, it doesn't say that we shouldn't reflect upon these and think about doing them, but as we reflect upon them too, we begin to think how we're not so generous, we're not so self-disciplined, we're not so patient, you know. So this is what Ohigan represents, these 6 paramitas. To me, this represents spring, baseball. I love baseball, and it's my favorite sport, and I'm a Giants fan. I hope there's no Dodger fans here today. Oh, you're a Dodger fan. Thank you. Despite the fact that the Dodgers are buying up every player that they can find, I'm still hopeful that the Giants will win. Every spring, I think this. And in my mind, I'm so hopeful. I grew up watching Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Tom Haller, Juan Marichal, and others. And today's team is full of people that I'm not that familiar with. There's a few, but when people think about spring and baseball now, they're thinking Shohei Ohtani and other people like that. But I have high hopes for the springs. And I think, to me, baseball represents harmony. The way it moves and the way it operates, it represents harmony. So back to Ohigan, though, this observance is intended to instill in us a sense of hope that maybe there's a better world. Maybe there'd be peace and happiness in our world. However, much of this is really out of our hands, isn't it? But each of us can hope for individual peace of mind, individual enlightenment. And this time of year is when we are better equipped for spiritual practice. And as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, what is our practice? Okay, the answer might be, well, we say Namo Amida Butsu. The other question is then, why do we need Namo Amida Butsu? Why do we say it? And the answer is that in this life, we live with self-centeredness. And the result is we have anxieties. We have obstacles in life. And it's the Nembutsu that pulls us over to the other shore. So Ohigan is really a time to reconcile some of our anxieties and our sufferings. I'll be honest, I was a little nervous coming to Sacramento. And in my past, I have caused a lot of anxiety. I've caused pain and suffering to others. And I apologize for that. But at the same time, I hope that there's room for forgiveness. I hope that there's room for all of us to have forgiveness in our hearts. So I want us to also understand that perhaps more than the Nembutsu, the practice of a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist is to look within oneself, introspection. It is said that if you hear and listen to the teachings, then the recitation of Namo Amida Butsu is only a natural response to what we are receiving. So Namo Amida Butsu is only the result of hearing and listening to the teachings. And sometimes we're hearing, but we're not listening. My wife back there, she tells me I need a hearing aid because I don't listen. She says, I don't listen to her. Just the other day, she said, how do you spell niche? I said, M-I-T-C-H. She said, niche. Yeah, M-I-T-C-H. And then she says, never mind, I don't know why I bother talking to you. The truth is, I listen, but I don't hear. If I could hear, then the words that she is saying would take effect on me, and I'd respond correctly. Listening means something is taking effect upon our lives. Okay? Listening does not simply mean to hear. So, listening to the Dharma, as Renyo says, he says, with our whole being, and it will take effect upon our lives. In Japanese, we have the word kiku. It has three meanings. One is to hear, to listen. The other is the chrysanthemum, flower. And the third is something is taking effect upon us, like the medicine that we take. So on many of our Jodo Shinshu altars here, we have what's called the kikurinto, okay, which means chrysanthemum circular lamp. It's a unique lamp to Jodo Shinshu, and it has the chrysanthemum flowers engraved on those lamps. So kiku means to listen, but more important, to hear. Shinran Shonin says, the word hear in the passage from the largest sutra means that sentient beings, having heard how the Buddha's vow arose, its original fulfillment, are altogether free of doubt. This is what it means to hear. And finally, kiku can refer to the benefit that we receive. As I mentioned, just like the medicine that we take, the Buddha has often been likened to a doctor who gives us the cure for our selfishness and our ignorance. He prescribes that for us. So the large kikurinto on our altars are not merely there for decoration. They are there to remind us of the importance of listening, and not just hearing things, but deeply hearing things. So one day, a man went to a Buddhist temple, and he went to hear the Dharma, and he listened to the message that day. And the man sat there and he kind of shook his head and said, "Well, this isn't very interesting." And after the service, he said to the monk, "Hey, your message was garbage, so you are also garbage." I hope I don't hear that after today. Now, if ordinary people heard this, they'd probably get angry, or you'd be hurt, when you hear a response like that. So the monk responded to the man, "You are a very kind person because you teach me about my true nature. Thank you very much." And the man looked back at the monk and said, "Geez, what's with this guy? I don't understand him." So he went home, told his wife of the encounter, and then told him what he said to the priest. And the wife responded to him, "The monk is very kind and gentle. That is why he looked at you and thought, you are also kind and gentle. However, you looked at the monk and thought he is garbage because you are garbage." Yeah. So I hope my wife doesn't tell me that. But I shared this little story because this priest, this monk who sees the kindness in this individual is like the Buddha, like Amida. He sees with a pure heart. He sees each of us as precious and rare. No matter what we do in our lives, Amida looks at us in this way. Knowing we cannot have the same kindness and heart, Amida embraces us and he guides us. So this story tells us how we look at the world with all of our senses. We can see it with the heart of anger or kindness, with disgust or appreciation. And by listening to the Buddha's message, we begin to see the true and real self. You've probably seen this image before. It's one of the most famous images that we show during Ohigan. It depicts the other shore of enlightenment, and this is the white path and the two rivers, one of fire and one of water. Zendo Daishi, the Chinese monk, used this metaphor to illustrate the path that leads one to the land of Amida Buddha. So this man is standing on the path, and the traveler is you and I, caught in the world of samsara, suffering and sorrow. The rivers are raging. They represent anger and hatred, represent our greed and attachments. And it's scary, and it's dangerous. And behind the man are wild beasts and bandits. They're urging him to stay. Don't go. All these competing elements create confusion and create doubt. Zendo wants us to place ourselves in the shoes of that man standing on that white path. So what would be our reaction if we found ourselves in that position? What would we do if we're in that predicament? Personally, I would convince myself, everything's fine. I'm good right where I am. No need to risk my life. No need to take that white path. I'm comfortable living my life now. No need to risk losing what I have here and now. And when the Buddha calls me from that other shore, come just as you are, I say, it's okay. I'm fine right here. The Buddha, Shinran, and Amida, they all want us to look at ourselves standing on this shore. We don't see who we are, what we are, sometimes lost and sometimes confused. That is the definition of someone like me. So Shinran and Denyo were really amazing in the way that they looked at this idea of the Pure Land and the other shore. Shinran used the word wataru, which means to be pulled over by something. And we are pulled over by our seeing ourselves. It means to being pulled over. So what pulls us over, or we must cross over some of the anxieties that we have in this life. Okay? Growing old, being accepted, being liked, fear of being alone, constant anxiety over money, jobs, marriage, children, the anxieties that are created by our thoughts and our words and our actions. But it's the Nembutsu that pulls us over. Listening means not just the Dharma, what we hear on Sunday, but it means the inner voice that we hear each and every day. Sooner or later, that inner voice takes effect upon our lives, just like listening to the Dharma. And the act of listening is what identifies the practice of a Jodo Shinshu practitioner. You know, we talk about gratitude a lot in our temples, but gratitude is only the result of the teaching taking effect upon our lives. We must place all diligence in listening, no matter how boring or how long the sermon might be. Daniel Shonin said, listen with your legs. In other words, make an effort to truly listen, because when we listen diligently, the teachings will begin to take effect upon our lives. We shall be able to experience the power of Namo Amida Butsu and gratefully say the words Namo Amida Butsu. And it is this experience, this awakening, that shall ferry us across all of those anxieties to the other shore. So before I close, I want to talk about perhaps another metaphor that we can use besides the white path. This is a temple in northeastern part of Kyoto called Sanzein. It's one of my favorite places to visit. It's beautiful up there. It's moss gardens. It's really a wonderful, quiet place. Tourists don't go there, so it's a wonderful place. But this temple was built by our sixth patriarch, Genshin. He built it in memory of his parents as a memorial to them. And the reason I bring this up is because it has a unique architectural style. So inside, there's 3 statues, one of Amida, and on one side is Seishi Bosatsu and the other Kannon Bosatsu. So the bodhisattvas of wisdom and compassion on either side. The statue of Amida is fairly large, so when they built the temple, they had to design the building itself to accommodate this large statue of Amida. So this is a section of a hull of a ship. Okay? Now if we turn it upside down, this is what the roof of that Gokurakudo looks like. It looks like the hull of a ship that's been turned upside down. So this is kind of a unique style. It's called the Gokurakudo, the Hall of Perfect Bliss. And it reminds us of Shinnan's words to encourage us to board the ship of Nembutsu. The ship has been provided for us. All we need to do is board that ship. So if we had the choice of walking a small white path with flames and water splashing on either side and having to walk that narrow path, or take a boat, which would we do? Personally, I'd take the boat. So we often hear that to cross over by walking this white path, and it's a great metaphor, but Amida Buddha provides for us this other way, this way of riding on a ship, sailing across the ocean. Shinran encourages us to embark upon the boat of Buddha's teachings. So in Jodo Shinshu, the boat is not only the Dharma, but it's the vow itself that Amida called the great ship. And so he says we can cross over the painful sea of birth and death by boarding the ship of Amida's vow. Okay, the reason I like this metaphor is because, one, we're not alone walking this path. We're on a cruise ship with all these other people. Okay? And Amida calls us, Shakyamuni calls us, and yet we just kind of relax on the deck of the ship and sail across the ocean. And I think about all of these people on board the ship. We're not alone. We're traveling together. And what comes to mind is that they're having a good time. Some are listening, maybe some are not listening. Some are seeing, some are not seeing. So this is how we live our lives. This is how we live our lives each and every day. And we might call it ignorant bliss, But through the Dharma, which is itself unfolding before us right now as we speak, we're encouraged to see the true and real self, even though it's painful. Yeah. So there's a story that my good friend and my Dharma teacher, Reverend Tetsuno, shared with me that I want to share with you today. It's about a very nosy neighbor who would criticize all her neighbors around her, criticize their children for being too loud. She'd criticize the yard for having all its weeds in there. She'd criticize the car being parked in a bad place. She criticized how their house looked. And she would continually criticize this one neighbor for not doing her laundry properly. She'd look out the window and say, "Look how dingy her laundry is. She doesn't do it right. I'd hate to live with this woman and have to deal with all this dirty laundry, have to wear that dirty clothes." So this is the window from which that woman is looking out at that laundry. She is looking through dirty windows and she's seeing dirty laundry. Okay. Now this might seem like a silly example perhaps, but we look at the world through our own lenses, seeing what we want to see, hearing what we want to hear. Shinran says, "My eyes being hindered by blind passions, I cannot perceive the light that grasps me. Yet the great compassion, without tiring, illuminates me always." So as we look at ourselves, we see ourselves being silly sometimes and not seeing things correctly. But yet, this great compassion always shines on us. So listening to the Dharma helps change our outlook on the world. Jodo Shinshu Buddhists are those who truly realize the embracement and deeply and carefully listen to the teachings. Amida's vow tells us that no matter what happens during the journey, we're assured of reaching that other shore without any difficulty. And such doubts and fears spring from an unenlightened mind, the mind that Shinran called the dark mind, the mind of the foolish being, the Bombu. The source of our suffering, the source of our anxieties, comes from our delusional self. For Shinran Shonin, the dissolution of the dark mind through the light of the Buddha's wisdom gives rise to the diamond-like trust we call Shinjin, that once attained cannot be reversed, and thus is the decisive cause for carrying us over to the other shore of enlightenment. Thank you very much. Will you please join me in Gasho? Though we lack both disciplinary practices and wisdom, we can cross over the painful sea of birth and death by boarding the ship of Amida's vow. Upon crossing over the shore of the recompensed land, the dark clouds of evil passions will instantly be cleared away, and an enlightened moon of Dharma nature will quickly appear. Then we shall become one with the light, unhindered in the 10 quarters, and shall benefit all sentient beings. Then and only then can we say that we are enlightened. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much.